In today's video, we're going to take a look at downtown Toronto condo prices by specific neighborhood and community. We're going to take a look at the most trafficked and most renowned communities and neighborhoods in downtown Toronto and see what condos are going for in those areas. We're going to be mainly taking a look at sales from June 1st. At the time of recording of this video is July 21st. So to account for, almost 2 full months of transactions. And we're going to take a look at it from an average and median basis and see what's going, what's not, what's selling, and at what prices. So without further ado, let's start. All right, so we have the map function available in front of us. And the grid you see here is the grid with regards to communities in downtown Toronto by TREB. Now, the TREB communities are not a perfect one-for-one for what we might use in everyday parlance. Some people, for instance, might not consider Trinity Bellwoods to be from Bathurst to, even past Ossington, maybe, as you can see here, Dover Court, right? But it's more or less maps onto what most people's ubiquitous understanding of these communities may be. Let's first start by taking a look at, for instance, Waterfront C1. This is pretty much Yonge to Bathurst by Waterfront Lakeshore. You capture some of the sales around the Wellington area, Front Street West, Fort York, City Place. So let's see what has sold here. Let's just simply draw a little bit of a boundary we have here. And in that central to western downtown Waterfront, we see, as of the most recent data, 169 sales with an average sold price of $723,000 and a median of $610,000. This low here, ignore that. That's just a $10,000 locker unit that sold. And of course, the $2.7 million unit is probably a very nice high-end luxurious unit. But to go a little bit more granular, you have these Brunel sales for 15 Fort York, 11 Brunel. Like these buildings quite a bit, have been to these buildings a lot, have bought and sold in these buildings. Probably some of the only City Place condos I recommend. By the way, watch my full video on that. There's one in Dan Leckie sold for $370,000. And you should already know my opinion on 151 Dan Leckie. And a very low-key building, 550 Front Street, Penthouse 3. This one sold for $585,000. Right by the water, we have this unit in 401 Queens Quay, which sold for $1.2 million. And I can just keep going through sales. But not much activity in terms of Queens Quay. I mean, this much activity is considered to be on the weak side for Queens Quay. Let's traverse a little bit further west to the Niagara region. Niagara captures some Liberty Village, of course. You have the Western Batteries, you have the Lynn Williams, East Liberty, and then you have some of the Fort York buildings. For instance, you have the Grand Magazine, the Anuzi, the Bastion. Now, I've actually purchased and sold a lot of units on Bastion and Anuzi, more so Anuzi. I just recently purchased 2 units in Bastion this year, and then I've purchased upwards of 4 units in Anuzi, 38 Anuzi to be specific. So these are buildings I've talked about a lot on this channel. As I draw this boundary, I guess to add a little bit more, Anuzi is a really good building, solid B- to B+ building. I like Bastion a bit more. The Condo Corp in Bastion is a little bit of a better shape, but finishes in Anuzi are typically a bit better. Here, clearly, we see a much cheaper price, being namely the mean or average sold price of $678 with a median of $640. And keep in mind, this accounts for all condos from studios to 2 beds to 3 beds, right? This unit you see, 325, was bought by yours truly. We bought it, that was listed at around, I think, $590 something. We bought it for $573. 600 feet lower, Penthouse 3106. I actually showed this in person. Not surprised it went $40K less than ask because it has great water views, but it's a triangular layout. Quite awkward, and only 1 washroom for 2 bedrooms usually. Doesn't cut it. Interesting sale, 1.3 for this 18 Grand Magazine townhouse. 1,600 square feet, so a pretty good price per square foot. All right, let's go more central and take a look at Bay Street Corridor. Bay Street Corridor, a very, very conflicting area for me. Some really good end user quality buildings, but a lot of depreciated buildings or buildings that won't have much appreciation upside. Draw the boundaries to Bay Street Corridor here. And here we see a average sold price based on 85 sales since June 1st to the time of recording of this video, July 21st, of $820,000. You might be thinking, what the hell is happening? But you got to look at the high side. There was a $3.1 million unit that sold. The median here is much more representative. It's $688,000 median. And that $3 million unit that sold, I wouldn't be surprised. Let's try to find it. It's most likely on Charles Street or Yorkville somewhere. Not this one. Is it one of these? There we go. 77 Charles Street, unit something. So a 1+1 sold for 3.1 million. Let's take a look at this. This is a 1+1 that sold for 3.1 million. I mean, it's not a typical +1+1. They don't make them like this anymore, 1,400 square feet, but this is something surely. Oh, heavily renovated, of course. Great views of the city. Wow. But still, I don't know, man. Not for me to judge. Great unit, but $3 million. Of course, you have these 1001 bays and 1055 bay. Made a whole entire video reviewing these two buildings in person on the ground. Go check that out. I'll hopefully put the thumbnail somewhere on the screen here. Shortly put both quite comparable. Obviously the differences around the edges. Great end user options, more limited resale upside. I tend to lean a little bit more towards 1055 bay, but both are pretty decent. It just depends on what unit you end up with at what price, right? And Church Young corridor, the average here is 661,000 with a median of 586. Not surprised that the median here is the cheapest we've seen thus far. Church Young corridor, you know, not necessarily, I would say, sketchy. There's some what people would consider sketchy areas. I'm very relaxed with that type of stuff. And also a lot more depreciated buildings relative to, for instance, Bay Street corridor, like a lot more older buildings here, even compared to Bay Street, which Bay Street corridor has a lot of older buildings. And then a lot of awful buildings as well. I mean, not a lot, but like one truly awful building, which I don't want to name because I'm done with getting RICO complaints and lawsuits, which maybe I should address in a future video. There is a lot more coming my way, unfortunately. Let's just say there's an awful building on Jarvis. I shall not name it. That gets considered in Bay Street corridor. You have some of the older Dalhousie ones, and then some of the newer Dalhousie ones, such as 82 Dalhousie Unit 1803. Did any of the older Dalhousie ones sell? Doesn't appear as if they did. It's interesting, like buildings like 197 Young, they're so on the border that some listings will have them as Bay Street corridor, some buildings will have them as Church Young corridor. Technically it's Church Young corridor. This unit that sold for 885, I wanted to check out. Oh, pretty good interior. This is a rare floor plan for 197 Young. 197 Young typically doesn't have these floor plans, and even at this price point, they still have this fishbowl bedroom. Pretty good views though of the city, surely. Kind of reminds me of the type of layout you would find in 1 Bloor Street East. Let's not neglect Waterfront C8. Let's take a look at this one. Waterfront C8 actually has, I think, some of my favorite buildings in downtown, believe it or not. Technically, the Canary Commons are considered a different neighborhood, and every day, you know, if you're living, you're not saying, I'm going to Waterfront C8 to hang out today. You're saying, I'm going to go to Canary Commons, or you're saying, I'm going to Queens Quay East. But Canary Commons, Canary District, Distillery District, and just Queens Quay East are technically all one community insofar as Treb is concerned. And, you know, let's take a look at it. All right, average of $796,000 with a median of 674 and a high of 3.4 million. I feel like a weatherman, by the way. But a high of 3.4 million and a low of $431,000. And the reason I'm very bullish on this area is because of the Tridel buildings on Queens Quay East, or, you know, by Edgewater or Merchants Wharf. You guys already know I've talked about Edgewater a lot. I love Edgewater. I love Merchants Wharf. You have the new Merchants Wharf, 118 Merchants Wharf. Bonnie Castle pulls its weight as well, although it's not quite in the tier of those. But I've just talked about these buildings many times. Matter of fact, the buildings I like the least in this kind of like vicinity are most likely the Lower Jarvis ones, and they're not bad. Lower Jarvis ones are not bad. They're just overpriced compared to what you can get here, I think. You even have some of St. Lawrence Market captured here, right? St. Lawrence Market is also its own community. 65 Scatting. Scatting is a building I know well. I sold a unit there. Then you have the Time and Space condos, which have been hearing very mixed things on so far. And when it comes to Trinity Bellwoods, there aren't that many sales. Here we have Trinity Bellwoods. This is technically Little Italy, so it's reduce that in here. This is pretty much all you have in Trinity Bellwoods. That's why it doesn't make much sense to do medians and averages based on just these, this one in 955, this one in 109 Housington, 109 Housington, 1239 Dundas, and then another one in 955. It doesn't make sense to do much in terms of averages and medians, right? Let's take a look at Regent Park now. As you guys know, Regent Park is one of my hottest takes. Amazing community. I don't care if, you know, it was government housing 20 years ago, and I don't care if you think it's dangerous today. It's not. I bought for families. It's actually quite family friendly. People who think Regent Park is dangerous today, whether you're an older person who clutches their pearls or a young person who thinks they're a gangster, you've never actually been in a dangerous city, right? That's a, you know, horseshoe theory of like a 75-year-old grandma and a 18-year-old hoodlum. They both think Regent Park is the hood. It's not. It's both those parties are equally wrong. It's quite safe. The worst that will ever happen is you might have to see a homeless person on, oh my God, let's get you a helpline immediately if you have to see a homeless person. Nonetheless, based on 15 sales, really low of 565 in average and really low 550 in median. Matter of fact, some of the most affordable 2-bedrooms are here. This unit in 225 Sackville sold for $749,000. It was 700 square feet, probably not accounting for the balcony. Per square foot, and the buildings are good too, by the way. They're not like stellar out of this world building. You're not gonna have any stellar out of this world building in Regent Park. You're just gonna have very good serviceable buildings at cheap price per square foot because it still has that stigma, but the community is great. All right, guys, so there's so many more communities we could have covered. So much in the city of Toronto. I'm only one man, and I do work with buyers, sellers, tenants, landlords, day in, day out. Create content for other platforms as well. So I can only do so much on YouTube. If I could make a video every day covering the most obscure street in Mississauga to York Region to downtown to Midtown to Oshawa, I would, but I can't. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. For any buying, selling, leasing inquiries, my link is in the description box. Set up a chat, set up a call. It's easier than ever to talk to me. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, stay tuned. Thank you.